conditions were horrible, and it was a very strong team that Berhalter put out, and they created chances. But I would have, personally, before the game, I expected more from that group. Luckily, they were able to have the resilience that Greg talked about, find a way not to lose, to get a result late in that game. And yes, it builds character, and yes, it's nice to see a group of guys bond and be able to find a way to come away with a result. But in the end, the performance, really should have been better against that opposition, even though the conditions were terrible.
We're looking at the U.S. 11 that started the match. The guy who got the start up top is Haji Wright, and that we know is a position, Ale, that is hotly contested. This felt like Haji Wright's shot. What did you think of what he made of it?
When you look at Haji Wright, and you just look at the player, you would have thought that the conditions in a match like this would be perfect for him to showcase the things that he can do. Because the United States were going to have difficulties playing through the midfield. And when you have mud everywhere and water everywhere, you're taking a chance if you start knocking the ball around through the midfield, you turn the ball over in a bad area, now you're asking for trouble. So you bypass some of that pressure, and then you go on for the long ball, more direct play. So you look at Haji Wright, just physically, just look at the player and say, well, this guy should be able to, with his strength, with his physicality, hold off defenders. Or at the very least, give you the work rate to give you that option. What I didn't see from him, and obviously Greg Berhalter didn't see enough either because he got taken off at halftime, is that there was no work rate. There was no hold-up play. Everything was just very slow and very deliberate. And if indeed you're a bubble guy and this is your opportunity, what you want to see from him is intensity. Is, you know what, I'm not going to be denied the opportunity. Here I am. Let me do something. Let me show what I do. He was more than content to just be another guy on the field where he needed to be an outstanding guy on the field. He wasn't that last night.
Stevie, give me the coach's decision-making perspective here, because we're looking, a lot of bubble players right now. Jordan Morris makes a play. He scores a goal on a header. Is that one play enough to put a guy on a plane for a World Cup?
I wouldn't say that one thing, but what he's done previously and what he's shown previously, certainly to my eyes, is that's what he is. On the world stage, he's an impact guy off the bench. And what he's done is prove to Berhalter that he's back to when he was at his best as that player. So that particular decision, yeah, it's not a one-off because he's done it before, but he's done it again. And so for me, that's what cements him in the squad.
And if you're in a position like Jordan Morris where you're a bubble guy, right? You want to give every reason possible to get a check next to your name rather than being crossed out.
Right.
And so when the impact play is late in the match and you see him rising above, back post, scores a goal, that's a check next to your name. Did Haji Wright get a check next to his name yesterday? No, he did not. Ethan Horvath? No, he did not. So there are limited opportunities to begin with. You must be able to give coaches a reason to believe this guy can be useful to us. In a specific role, he can be useful to us. Jordan Morris did that last night. Other guys did not.
Here's another thing as well. The fact that Berhalter's talking about when he came in, everybody's clapping him and cheering him. You've also got to think when you're picking a World Cup squad, I need players who are not going to be starting, who are going to be happy campers, who are going to be good around the group, whether they play or not. Now, we're talking the positive that he can come on and do something, but between now and then, maybe somebody else steals the limelight and can do the same thing better. But you know that if you take this guy and he doesn't kick a ball, he's going to make the camp happy. Everybody's going to be okay. So that's, again, another positive in his direction.
Right, Kasey, speaking of bubbles, let's talk about the goalie situation here. I mean, where does Ethan Horvath's performance last night leave him in the pecking order, and who's number one right now?
Well, I think the number one is still the big question. I think when you're talking about the performance that Sean Johnson had the other day, and then compare that to Ethan Horvath, when you have two guys that everyone assumed were fighting for that number 3 position. And right now you have to probably hint at Sean Johnson ahead of Ethan Horvath. I mean, where that starting role comes in, I mean, that's the biggest headache for Greg Berhalter right now. We've talked a lot about the number 9, and you guys, I thought, made it very clear that Haji Wright didn't surround himself in glory last night for multiple reasons. And so that number 9 position is still a big question mark. But the goalkeeping has to as well. And, it's been an ongoing conversation through these 4 games that you're potentially going to have your number 1 and number 2 who are challenging each other, not playing week in and week out for their club sides. And does that open the door for somebody else like a Sean Johnson who will be playing for NYCFC all the way through until November comes? That is going to be a very difficult proposition for Greg Berhalter and his coaching staff if there's not a clear number 1 because nobody's playing.
Kasey, who would you take?
Well, I think right now you're looking at Stefan, Matt Turner, and Sean Johnson right now.
Okay.
I think if you're looking at that now, there is some issues, obviously, when your 2 number 1s aren't probably going to be playing. So it is tough. You're going to have to look at that those 2 matches in September. You're then going to have to look and see, are potentially, Stefan and potentially Turner playing in Leagues Cup matches. Is that enough to warrant a form to start in a World Cup? Look, I don't know. It's not ideal, obviously, but in the end, Greg's going to have to make a choice who he feels is the best goalkeeper at that time, because I don't think it's going to be something where you're going to be seeing multiple guys in great form and then having to make that difficult decision. It's going to be a different difficult decision, and that is, what does your gut tell you that you think you can trust going into a World Cup?
So, yeah, Morris, talk about Jordan Morris, kind of one play maybe being the difference between making the World Cup and not. With Ethan Horvath, it's the opposite, isn't it?
Disaster.
Yeah.
Because that'll be, and there's only 2 games to go, and you're always going to remember the last thing that happened, pretty much. And if Horvath doesn't get another opportunity, then the last thing in your brain is a guy making such a basic error in a game like that. What's he going to be like when the pressure's on? So horrendous for Horvath.
The perception of Ethan Horvath as we're watching the game and the goal happens, and Kasey would know this much better than I would with all his experience, but all I'm saying, as I'm watching the replays and I'm watching how the goal happened, his body language and his lack of reaction, I understand that he's anticipating a cross. Well, at some point you have to be able to digest and process the information. No, it's not a cross. Let me at least make an attempt for the ball. His reaction was just watching it and then he was down. And it's almost as if, as he's seen that ball go in, he's seen the World Cup go by.
Ouch. Oof. Kasey, you agree?
Painful, isn't it?
Unfortunately, yeah. I mean, it's tough because, first and foremost, if El Salvador scores a goal where they just slam some ball in the upper corner, nobody's going to look at Ethan Horvath for anything. They're going to look at all the other things he did and recognize that was a potential goal that you have no chance on. But okay, how was your positioning? How was your distribution? How are you coming for crosses? How did you kind of handle all those other situations on a difficult pitch? But instead, you get caught cheating on a cross and have no reaction to come back and try to recover. Yeah, that's tough. That's a tough one to swallow when your opportunities. I mean, we're assuming that Ethan Horvath was not penciled in to play in the 2 friendlies in September. So either he has to win the starting job at Nottingham Forest and have a lights out start to the season to get himself back into the equation, because I think really when you saw the 2 matches that were given to one first to Sean Johnson and then to Ethan Horvath, it was all right, let's see how either of them do in these 2 matches to try to make that decision on that 3rd spot, and it has to be advantage Sean Johnson.
Well, thank you very much for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming, premium content, and let's not forget as well, ESPN FC 7 days a week. Subscribe to ESPN+.